Greetings, children of the screen. Your friendly neighborhood nerd scum here once again, and today I'm going to be taking a quick moment to talk to you guys about Legion of Superheroes Millennium #1. That's right, guys! It's another Brian Michael Bendis book, and it's got art in this one from, let's take a look here. It's Jim Lee, Dustin, and I apologize for the pronunciation on these names as always, Dustin Negan, Andrea Sorrentino, and Andre Lema Arajo? That's not how you say that. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so yeah, I just checked out Legion of Superheroes Millennium #1. Let's talk about it for a minute, guys. So, first off, the main character, at least for this issue, is going to be Rose and Thorn. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with Rose and Thorn, she is actually kind of an older character who exists, like, before Crisis. And before Crisis, she was actually from Earth 2, I believe. And in the years since then, they've kind of tried to do a couple of other little things with her. And it's never really worked out. So I'm actually down for him using this character. She is one of those characters like Crazy Jane, who has, like, her superpower is essentially that she has a split personality. Unlike Crazy Jane, it's just two personalities. It's not multiple personalities. It's just Rose and then her, like, you know, disassociated self, alter ego, anti-hero, villain, vigilante, depending on which version you're in. So anyway, she's a pretty cool character, and what Bendis decides to do with her with this is show that she's actually been around for quite a long time, and that she's experienced not only various different, like, incarnations of herself and alternate timelines, but she is actually kind of aware of it. It's almost like Psycho Pirate after, like, in the post-Crisis continuity, where Psycho Pirate kind of remembered what was going on. Like, he remembered that there had been another world and stuff like that when nobody else did, and it feels like that's very much what he's doing with this character. But she's actually also aware of multiple timelines. So yeah, in this book, the basic plot sets out with, we start off with her being, like, interviewed or having a conversation with Supergirl, who at this point is, I think, like, president or something like that. And she starts basically recounting how, like, you know, she has this mental illness and they no longer make the medication for it, so she's, like, in a hypermanic state. And then she, like, starts going back and telling different parts of her story, and we basically see her kind of jumping through alternate timelines where, like, she talks to like an aged Terry McGinnis Batman Beyond, trying to figure out, like, what's going on. And in that scene she actually, like, mentions that there's, like, this cycle of repetitiveness that goes on throughout the multiverse or throughout DC Comics universe, where it's like, you know, there's, like, a crisis event, there's monsters, there's gods, there's all this stuff, you know, and then there's a reboot, and then there's rebirth, and all this kind of stuff. So it's very metatextual in that sense, like, definitely doing the Psycho Pirate thing, you know? And that's pretty much the whole book, as we see her, like, hop through these different timelines. So again, she's with Supergirl, and then she's with Batman Beyond, and then we see her, like, with Kamandi at Earth's End and stuff like that. And then we see her, what I think is, like, the regular, I think the book ends with the same timeline as when it starts, with, like, where she's talking to Supergirl, but I think what we're seeing at the end of the book is how we actually get to that moment, but they don't actually go there, so it's really hard to tell. Having said that, like, the way that this jumps through time and is kind of chronologically confusing actually does work in the context of, like, the character that we're dealing with. So overall, what I will say is that the book actually has a really interesting premise. It's got an interesting, like, ride-along character that is, like, complex and interesting, and she's actually pretty well written, and it gives us something both to, like, latch onto, as well as a way to, like, learn about this world that Bendis is going to be telling his story in, because it's very clear from reading this it's not going to be the typical Legion of Superheroes timeline. Bendis has essentially set up a book in a world where he can do whatever he wants. He can reference whatever stories he actually read, he can reference those. And the stories he didn't actually read, he can kind of ignore them. He's kind of created an insulated space for himself to tell this story and do whatever he wants, which is both really cool and really, really frustrating. It's really cool because it does actually mean that the book kind of works, and it's actually pretty fun, and even when you find something that kind of gets under your skin in terms of continuity, it kind of goes with the flow of things and you can let it go. On the other hand, it goes to the point of what I've been saying about Bendis, which is, like, he really doesn't give a crap about continuity or any of that stuff. He's just going to do whatever he wants to do. And that'll lead us to the things that I felt didn't really work on the book, but I do want to say that the artwork in the book is really solid. From the various artists, the coloring's really good. Most of the line work and ink work is really, really solid. Like, the book flows, and for each period it has a distinct look, and it's really cool. So, the art in the book is pretty solid. On to things about the book that I didn't really care for. So, it's very Bendis-y. And that works for the book, and it also works against the book. So the book is mostly dialogue, like most Bendis books. And I definitely feel like not a lot actually happened in this book, despite all the jumping around, because most of the jumping around just consists of us having more conversations. The conversations, for the most part, are actually pretty well written. It's not like Bendis at the end of his time at Marvel, where it felt like he was doing, like, he was like, oh, I've got to write a Brian Michael Bendis book, and there's a specific way. It almost felt like he was doing like an impersonation of his own style. Whereas here, it feels very natural, but at the same time, he does that thing that is very inherent to Marvel. We don't see it as much in DC, but it's like the book's trying to be like edgy and like appeal to like, you know, a teenage demographic, so like it wants to have lots of swearing, but it can't have swearing, so it uses the asterisks, but the asterisks never make sense. It's always like a 4-letter word where you would never use a 4-letter word. It would, you know, like it would normally be like a 6 or 8-letter word, you know, like effing, but it's just 4, and then the next one will be 5. Like, it never makes any sense, and it totally pulls you out of the book, and also makes you confused about what the person's trying to say, because it never adds up. Like, it never evens out. And that is really, really distracting. The other thing that I would say, again, that I didn't care for in the book, again, is just the fact that, like, we go through this whole issue, and we kind of have an idea of what's going on. It's kind of confusing, but, like, they never really set out the real premise of the book. I guess, like, the premise of the book is going to be, like, you know, Thorn and Rose and Thorn trying to, like, reconcile their two parts and, like, figure out where they belong in the timeline or something, but, like, it doesn't really say. So, like, even though I, for the most part, actually did enjoy this book, I have no idea what it's about or where it's going or what it's trying to do, other than it being a way of Bendis creating a way that he can do whatever he wants while also commentating on the company that he now works for and their history, his selective knowledge of it. So yeah, all in all, guys, I would actually say that I enjoyed this book more than quite a few Brian Michael Bendis books that I've read in the past. Young Justice, when it first started out, was actually pretty fun, but all the continuity stuff really gets in the way of enjoying the book if you're familiar with the continuity at all in DC Comics. This book sidesteps that in a very interesting and fun way. So I would say, all in all, on this book, I'd probably get it a 3 to 3.5 out of 5. I definitely enjoyed it. I'm interested to see what happens in the next book, but I'm obviously still hesitant, and I still have reservations. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for checking this out. Definitely check out Legion of Superheroes if this at all sound interesting to you. If you happen to check it out this week, let me know down in the comments below what you thought of it. Right on, guys. Thank you very much. Hope you all have a good one. Nerd Scum, out.